not pretty much the same, but similar to the ones Germany unfortunately has, and still recovering from. But last week I had heavy thunderstorms, rainfall, hail, fallen trees, broken branches that cause power outages, cellular network outages. I had 20 hours without electricity, making impossible to make even a simple phone call. There was no internet, no power, no civilization. When I wanted to check email, I need to drive dozens of kilometers to find the network signal. So it's been quite an experience, I would say, in the middle of a city. Yeah, but now everything back to normal, and I hope our colleagues in Germany are getting better and did not suffer that much in the areas they live, as we can see on the TV.
Yeah, incredible, incredible like videos and stuff that came out from Germany the other week. Nico, how have things been when where you are?
So in Munich, everything is awesome. Of course, we see the river of Isar having like lots and lots and lots of water, but considering what has happened in my hometown just around Aachen, it must have been pretty much a nightmare. If you just think about stones of cement weighing like 200 kilograms at least, and they have been reordered by the flood. It's just insane. So I've seen footage, I've seen pictures where even small, very, very small and tiny rivers have just become a massive attack. So fingers crossed, each and everything will work out. But having in an industrialized country like Germany, roughly 180 deaths within 2 days is just insane. And this just gives a slight idea about what has actually happened.
Yeah, well, it's very grim. I have a friend who was whose family was affected as well. The house all flooded. They had their grandfather who's quite old living in the house, but fortunately managed to get out. And I saw the videos that he posted, but obviously different being there, of course. But it looks really horrible. Like the all around Europe, it feels like the weather this summer has been really up and down. And even there was I don't know if you guys saw, but there were severe floodings in a city in China the other day as well, with also some like horrific images coming out of tunnels being flooded and people fleeing and things. It's a bit upside down this year, it feels like. I don't know if that's the feeling you guys are getting as well.
Yeah, I think people should realize that global warming is actually the real thing, and it's really time to do something. That's obvious. I mean, if you look back into the past, we never had this kind of severe weather conditions, and just put 2 plus 2 together and do the equation. It's pretty easy. I mean, I just simply cannot understand those who are saying that climate changes is not something what affect us.
Yeah, that's the harsh reality that I think more and more people are waking up to at the end of the day. It's just a shame that it's becoming politicized, just like anything else. But hopefully the world is heading towards some form of understanding that this is something we need to all join forces around. I think, looking at it from if we're going to try to take some form of positivity that what is happening in the world, I think it is the fact that ESG on the investment side of things is becoming a real thing, right? There's some pretty amazing statistics out there that something like 40% of all assets under management, something along those lines, I might be misquoting now, but something along those lines, are in ESG funds. So essentially, ESG is an ethical investment, you could say. In other words, companies, listed organizations these days, they have a financial incentive to be sustainable as organizations. A great example of that is Apple, who uses the ESG as front and center in their strategy to become a sustainable organization, and basically to think more long term rather than just quarter by quarter, because the trends are clearly pointing towards a more sustainable future when it comes to investments. And just to solidify that point a little bit, something that I find is very, very interesting. At the end of the day, we are only as strong as our weakest link, so to say. And on the investment side of things, on the listed companies, look at what's happening in the oil and gas industry, of all industries, where Shell, as everyone knows, one of the biggest oil and gas companies in the world, have committed to become a carbon neutral company by 2050. I think that speaks absolute volumes. Now, the argument is that lenient, considering the changes that is happening in the world, but at least there's a clear movement in the market towards sustainability. I think also there was in Exxon there was some changes now in the board, that basically the investors are pushing in new board members that are more focused on sustainable future as well. So a lot of things are happening on the ESG front, and I think that for real change to happen, there needs to be financial incentives, because organizations are acting for the shareholders. At the end of the day, operations are there to make profit, and difficult to make real change just by ethical grounds. There needs to be a financial incentive as well. So I think that is something, at least if we want to take a slightly positive view, I think that is absolutely something to keep an eye for. And even in the iGaming industry, this is happening. The ESG investments are becoming a thing. Since around 2015, the industry has suffered because of this ESG trend. For those of you who are aware of the investment environment in the Nordics, for example, you guys know that a lot of the banks and large institutional investors have been divesting from the iGaming industry over the last couple of years because of ESG reasons. The iGaming industry has traditionally not been seen as a sustainable industry. But some organizations want to change that. We mentioned Kindred a lot of times. Kindred is clearly trying to take an ESG strategic shift here by trying to eliminate harmful gambling completely by 2023. So I think it's very interesting in general that investors are now looking at the efficacy of where they are putting their money, rather than just who is making the most profit now, or in the next quarter, yada, yada, yada. It's people are taking more responsibility. The world is changing. That's my little morning Thursday thoughts. What do you think, Karolina? I know that you are very that you have a lot of thoughts around sustainability and protecting the players and where the trends are heading in general. Does it make sense what I'm saying, or am I completely off the rails here?
No, totally makes sense. I just don't want to overtake this with responsible gaming again, because we've had many sessions like that. But just to add on what you said about investors investing in sort of impact businesses, I recently met this girl, Fiona, who I'm going to bring on a podcast, and she's a CEO of Force Impact CEO Association. And the whole purpose of that organization is actually supported by Richard Branson, and they bring together impact startups and investors that are interested in putting money into impact startups, and they organize these events all around the world, including Necker Island. And that's exactly how their whole goal is to find people who start businesses that do better for the world, and match them with investors who are interested in this kind of businesses. And a massive trend, impact startups, impact businesses.
Absolutely. I think as an investor, thinking long term, you should really ask yourself the question: what are the future most sustainable investments that you can make? Because those are most likely the investments that will do well in the very, very long term. We're talking, the next 5, 10, 15 years. So
I think the interesting point there is as well, because obviously when you talk about investing in sustainable things and then gambling and our kind of industry, a lot of investors shy away, sort of mainstream investors, from gambling ventures. But at the same time, Fiona told me that their approach is slightly different, because what they've realized is that a lot of people who make an exit from gambling and gaming venues, they channel their sort of wealth into social impact businesses, and Nick Mohan is one of the good examples as well. So they are actually open to supporting initiatives as long as they have some good goal, whether that's bringing more women into tech like I'm trying to do, or others, and then putting these people together with other founders to give them ideas what they can support once they have funds to invest.
yes, I agree with that, Karolina, as well. There's, I think we all in this room knows a lot of really good people in the industry who want to do good for the world at the end of the day, and I've seen as well a lot of really great examples of people making exits and using the money to do good at the end of the day. I think one of the more controversial, you could say, initiatives here is Erik Bergman, who founded Catena Media. He exited Catena Media a couple of years ago, became very wealthy at a young age, and now started Great.com, which is an initiative that aims to give away 100% of its revenue into charitable causes by doing affiliation, essentially. Quite controversial still, because he's basically raising money from gambling and channeling it into charity. But interesting nonetheless to follow.
It's controversial also because he's at the moment making losses, not making money. But what I love about that initiative is that he's super transparent, and he's publishing sort of reports. His salaries in the whole organization are transparent and public. And he's even published a blog post exactly splitting all the costs, all the money that they've made, exactly how much money. You can even see a ticker on his site on how much they've contributed. And he has said himself that he feels like it has not taken off yet, because it's not a lot of money, but he really feels that it's growing and going the right direction. So it's an interesting initiative, especially that he's very, very transparent about costs and the actual profits and contribution towards charity.
Absolutely. I haven't heard much from Erik actually since he released that. Interesting actually to do a little update with Erik Bergman and see how that initiative is turning out. Like you mentioned, Karolina, they obviously just started operations, and at the moment it's a lot of investment going into getting the site up and running. But once they get going, if he is able to achieve his goals at the end of the day, again, it's been very controversial, but at the same time very, very transparent. So hats off to him at the end of the day. I would say he's fighting the lion in the arena rather than sitting as a spectator judging. So he should have credit for that for sure. Right, guys, to start off today, like always, I want to welcome everyone who is up here on stage. Bogdan, Karolina, Rory, Nico, really nice to have you back here again. Karolina, Nico, my dear co-moderators, for always taking the time to prepare this. I want to just say as well that this session is being recorded. As always, we are publishing it through our iGaming Next social media channels. However, if someone would feel a bit uncomfortable about that, we very much respect the Clubhouse ethos, and we won't publish anything that people are not comfortable with. So please let me know if that would be the case. Also, if you would like to join us here on stage, just feel free to put up your hand, and we will let you up on stage here to contribute to the discussion today. Either if you want to contribute by your own opinions, or if you just have a question, that's totally okay as well. Or if you just want to enjoy the breakfast together with us here, listening in, that is absolutely perfect as well. So I know that Nico, my dear co-moderator, have prepared an absolutely incredible summary of what's happening in this very dynamic industry that is the iGaming industry of the last week. A lot of things have happened. Some really interesting news have come out, and I would like to leave over the word to Nico to do a little rundown of the latest and greatest of the industry. Feel free to take it over.
Okay, thank you for handing over to me. One thing before I just start, Ed, we see that you raised your hand. Unfortunately, we cannot bring you up to stage. This might be caused through a clubhouse error. If you just leave the room and come back again, raise your hand again, maybe we can then bring you on stage. So we tried to do it. All the three of us didn't work out. So just leave the room, come and join the room again, and then I'm pretty sure we can bring you on the stage. Yeah, as Pierre already mentioned, last week, the last 7 days had been quite interesting, and we literally had to cut out a lot of things. And it's still a pretty packed weekly wrap up. So PointsBet, they bring the former Bet365 Aaron Sullivan on board to lead their North American operation. Aaron is quite well known in the industry as being, as said, formerly part of the Bet365 and Rank Group. And now he will join PointsBet as their vice president of online casino revenue and to oversee North American operations as well. Fingers crossed, and best of luck for Aaron. Nice to see you again. So PokerStars become the Formula One betting partner until 2023. PokerStars has become an official betting sponsor for Formula One through a partnership secured by the Motor Racing Championship sponsorship and data rights partner named Inter-Regional Sports Group, short ISG. The partnership will see Flutter Entertainment-owned PokerStars feature exclusively throughout the European broadcast market via virtual trackside advertising. So we just discussed this internally within Karolina and Pierre after the well-known tobacco sponsorships are forbidden as of now. If we just remember Marlboro being a quite long-time partner of Ferrari, there are some spots to be taken, and obviously PokerStars just took one of the spots. Another sponsoring, Socios.com. They are replacing Pirelli as the front jersey sponsor of Inter Milan. So the reigning Serie A champions of Inter Milan have announced a new front jersey sponsorship deal with Socios.com. And they are replacing, as said, the Milan-based company Pirelli after 26 years as the front jersey sponsor. So the sponsorship deal with Socios.com, which will inject $24 million on a year-by-year basis to Inter Milan's finances, is the third largest across the 20 Serie A clubs. So if you're not familiar with Socios.com, it's an online fan voting platform that enables soccer fans to have a say in some of their favorite club decisions. So via the Socios.com platform, Inter fans will have the chance to get branded fan tokens. So this is a topic we have discussed quite a lot, the NFTs, the tokens. Interesting point, via Socios.com, you can just purchase these fan tokens via their own currency. It's called Chilis. So this is their exclusive cryptocurrency, and it's quite interesting to see this. And then another interesting news, because Entain could see another MGM move this week. So the Entain owns brands as Ladbrokes, Coral, Sportingbet, and they could see another takeover approach, as this week the 6-month takeover restriction of MGM ends. So earlier this year in January, MGM Resorts made a bid for the online and betting retail giant, valuing or on a price per share. It is over now. There are rumors going around that MGM will make another attempt for takeover, heading over to the US and Canada. So the Michigan sports revenue sees, unfortunately, an iGaming revenue fell by 6% on a month-to-month basis. So the internet gaming operators in Michigan reported a third straight month of decline in June, despite a leap in sports betting. So this June, iGaming related revenues fell by 6% on a month-to-month basis. And these figures had been released by the Michigan Gaming Control Board, short MGCB, but they show that gross internet gaming and sports betting just moved on a month-to-month basis from 114.3 million in May to 114.2 million in June. So this is just a loss of 100K. So in the end, these numbers are still great and they represent a strong sports betting market in Michigan. While we see a decline in Michigan, New Jersey reports record gambling revenues in June with roughly 374.2 million. So this is an increase of roughly 5% from the month-to-month basis, and it just it's based on strong figures in all three verticals. So the land-based casino gaming, online gaming, and sports betting. So the internet gaming revenue was roughly 107 million, and this is up 26.1% from last year. So it's great numbers we are seeing in New Jersey. Massachusetts is about to open up for sports betting. So Massachusetts, representing a GDP of roughly 612.970 million, is as big as Sweden from a GDP perspective. So a bill to regulate sports wagering in Massachusetts has been referred to the Committee of House Ways, and it means this means after it was introduced to the House on Monday, July 19th. So it's another big state in the US which might open up. Another interesting move we're seeing, South Dakota, they approved a tax change ahead of sports betting introduction. So the approved regulation include a significant change to the initial proposals, with federal excise taxes no longer allowed to be deducted from sports wagering revenue totals, which means the operators are to pay a tax rate on sports betting revenue of 9%. Sounds interesting, but if you take a look at the details, so sports betting is only allowed in the town of Deadwood, a popular tourist attraction and the only town in the state with legal casino gaming. In addition, mobile betting will be allowed on casino premises, with bettors having to register for the service in person. So even South Dakota might open up. It's still very, very restricted. And now heading over to the big news, which we have seen on the M&A side. So Flutter, they restructured debt to free up a liquidity worth of 250 million pounds. So in the deal, Flutter will upsize its existing US dollar term loan B credit facility to 1.5 billion, and they are roughly doubling the size of the loan. So the operator will then use most of the proceeds to immediately repay 1 billion worth a senior unsecured note which carried out a 7% interest rate. So by doing this move, this will provide Flutter with an additional mentioned 250 million pounds of liquidity, which they are officially stating as this money will be used for general corporate purposes. So we will see for sure another takeover. And then also Entain refinance debts and prepares for further M&A activities with another $1 billion loan they just drew. And they are freeing up $350 million. So Flutter on the clock, Entain on the clock. Then we have the MGM takeover bid for Entain as well. So we see something coming up on the horizon. Then the former Formula One team manager, Eddie Jordan, will be leading a $1 billion bid for OpenBet. So Eddie Jordan, the Irish business name and formerly running a Formula One company, is leading a $1 billion bid for Scientific Games OpenBet, and the planned takeover wasn't officially being reported on the news. It was confirmed by the former Australian Formula One racing driver Mark Webber via an Instagram post. So quite funny that Mark just released this big news, but it's interesting to see even the big guys and pretty rich businessmen are also taking a look at sports betting as well. And another thing, Scientific Games is to reincorporate a remainder of SciPlay in a 1.9 billion deal as well. So the proposal would see Scientific Games acquire the remaining 90% equity interested in the game developer of Scientific Games that it does not currently own in an all-stock transaction. So, and then following, Scientific Games would become a wholly owned subsidiary of Scientific Games. Heading over to regulation, and I will just cut things short. We are seeing a tax change in the Ukraine legislator. So the bill sets a 10% tax rate on all forms of gambling. We are seeing a tax shift change in Brazil as they completely changed to a revenue-based gambling tax. So previously in 2018, they agreed on a 3% turnover tax rate, and now they are changing it to a revenue-based taxation. And last but not least, Gibraltar also confirms a corporate tax rate increase to 12.5%. And they will use, so they increased from 10% to 12.5% to helping to support British overseas territory economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you have just listened, so last week was quite packed and we skipped a lot of topics. So I'm happy to just hand over the mic again over to Karolina or Pierre. And one more thing. Welcome on stage, Daniel. There have been, first of all, hopefully you're fully recovered. You've been in hospital for quite some time, and it's good and nice to see this familiar face again. I'm thrilled to hear your voice again. So fingers crossed, each and everything is okay with you.
Thanks, Nico. I appreciate it. I'm about 90% recovered, and I'll try not to talk too much because I cough about every 12th word. So, but thank you. It's great to be back.
Good to have you back, Daniel. Good to see that you're on the recovery trail. And to reiterate what you posted, COVID definitely is not a joke, as many people want to make it out to be. So happy to see that you are getting better, Daniel. happy to see that you're here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been absolutely horrific, and I encourage everyone to get vaccinated so they don't end up in hospital like I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, Daniel, and thank you, Nico, as well, for an absolutely fantastic update on what's happening in the industry. I can't think of any better place to to stay updated of the latest industry movements than to listen to that silk smooth German accent voice of yours, Nico. Thank you for that. I want to jump into the first topic of today. There's quarterly reports being released at the moment. This week is it's a quite interesting week for the industry because we have 4 very big reports coming out. Evolution Gaming released a report yesterday. Betsson released their report this morning, and Kindred and Kambi are releasing their quarterly updates tomorrow. And I want to start on the Evolution front, and I can see Tim, you are in here as well. Dear Team Heath, I know that you are a shareholder in Evolution, as am I as well, so I just want to make that clear. The Evolution quarterly report was very, very interesting yesterday because the market didn't know what to do with it. Evolution is such an interesting company in that regard that they've had this meteoric rise. Every single quarterly report has been outstanding, and even yesterday, revenue-wise, they exceeded the analysts' expectations with 100% growth year on year. Massive growth in the live segment, however, stagnant revenue in the RNG side of things. So NetEnt and Red Tiger have been stagnant over the last year. And also worth to mention is that Big Time Gaming has not been incorporated into the organization in Q2. That is happening starting from Q3. So Big Time Gaming is not disclosing any numbers so far. So it's interesting, this report, because the EBITDA growth was 115%, incredible growth in the organization, and still the markets were dull. It was a slight movement upwards yesterday in the share price, only about 1.5%. It seems that the investors are worried for the future, and at the same time as this exponential growth is continuing to happen in the company. So, not to put too much pressure on you, Tim, here, but can you explain why investors are not reacting more positively to such a seemingly great report?
Morning, Pierre, and yeah, Dan, hope you're feeling better, mate, after being a bit sick in hospital. It's an interesting one. I think Evolution is becoming the new Bitcoin, where you get people worrying about the ups and downs and how the market will move on nearly a daily basis. I think with all shares in general, we really need to always take a longer term view. And I think the Evolution management takes a similar view as well, where yes, they're publishing fantastic news and it was a wonderful report, but it's too big. It's an oil tanker. You know, ships don't move that quickly in terms of price. This is not a penny stock anymore, where you can see the effect of one bit of news can push the price. What was that? The GameStop one, the American one, which they pumped up on Wall Street beats. It doesn't happen like that. I think the view, and I was having a dinner last night with some influential people from Evolution, and they said, you know, we hold a long-term strategic view. You know, we want to dominate the American market, and it's not going to happen overnight. And yes, there will be some M&A along the way and whatnot, but we're not, Evolution are not concerned about short-term rises in their stock price. They just want to have good, strong, sustainable growth and focus on their long-term plans, which will deliver value over the long term for their shareholders. I don't know how active and how much trading goes on a daily basis of Evolution on the stock market, but I think, you know, as a small shareholder of Evolution like you, Pierre, that's fine. It's interesting to watch, but I don't think we should be taking too much concern or happiness over short-term fluctuations of that share price. I think the strength of knowledge is that the people running the ship in Evolution have a very, very strong long-term focus on how to build value for their shareholders. And you know, the one thing which always amazes me is that every dollar of revenue coming into Evolution is actually worth $75 or 75 euros, whichever one. It's quite a surreal P2E ratio there still on Evolution. And, you know, there's so many factors at play at moving a share price in a market these days that you can't just say that, you know, a good report will lead to an increase or a decrease. I think you've got to take that longer term perspective.
Right. It seems to be two factors at play here. I mean, at least Tim, we had this call with the institutional investor last week who had some like generic questions about the iGaming industry and Asia particularly, and the worry seems to be from the institutional investors that Asian revenue is let's say unsustainable or rather not so safe. Let's say that in opposition to regulated revenue from the US, for example, is considered much more safe as revenue. And we can see from the report of Evolution that the biggest growth market is clearly Asia. They are growing a lot in Asia. At the same time, they're also growing a lot in the States, in America. However, something that Paul Leyland of Regulus Partners talked about yesterday in the podcast we did together is that it's not a given that North America is going to open up many more states for Evolution to play in. He took the perspective that if that were to happen, that is a bonus, but you should not stand and fall on that scenario happening. What's your thoughts on the dynamics here play between Asian revenue, US revenue? Are the investors spooked? Are they overreacting to this concern?
Look, I think it's clear that Evolution are open and willing to discuss their Asian revenues and report by it. So they're not against saying to the market, yes, we're making money from Asia, irregardless of the illegally, whether it's allowed or not. I think you're right by saying you can't take the US market as a given, but that said, I think all of the trend lines, if we're trying to predict where the puck is moving, is that more and more states. I think Cincinnati is another studio where Evolution's opening up in the next couple of weeks as well, very soon. So I think the general trend is, yes, it is. But one question to always ask is that, is the market already pricing in that Evolution expansion in advance of them actually doing it? You know, is there say the gamble is already happening that people say, yep, they will move to the American market and expand further, and we're already going to price it into our sort of benchmark price we believe it should be. Now, that said, we all know Asia and gambling is all around the world, and Evolution have taken the attitude that, yes, we're happy to report this and we're happy to use this as somewhat of a cash cow to capitalise our expansion into new markets, being the US, and therefore any money coming from a regulated market is going to be valued at a much higher multiple than straight cash from an unregulated or a not illegal market or a pre-regulated market in that sense. So I think they're taking the right approach to it all, and I think they're happy to push hard in as many markets where it's not illegal and reap the benefits. But again, that long-term value will be from money made in regulated markets, which is sort of, it's a lot more safe and long-term, strategically a solid foundation.
Cool. Thank you, Tim. Karolina.
I wanted to add something, you know, when we were talking about the future of Evolution and some potential strategic moves, I've said before that I honestly think that they will go into PAM business, and it would be a smart move, especially in the US. And interestingly, I just heard a rumor this morning from someone, you know, close to the subject. It is a rumor, I need to highlight that, but apparently there has been a bid from Evo for SG part. The iGaming part without the lottery in sports, and it would totally make sense if something like this happened. And if to speculate further, then they just need Kambi on the package, and you know, it's a monster that is very hard to compete.
Wow, so the rumor is that Evolution Gaming put a bid on Scientific Games.
Yes.
Yes, I agree with you, Karolina, but and I was discussing this with Pierre last night, that I don't think the smart move is for Evolution to expand into new verticals and become that ex-Playtech monster. I think they're perfectly positioned to take a good 50% of the US market and move forward and explore new territories or new states as quickly as possible and establish themselves. Right now, eyes on the prize, and they don't need to worry about doing sports betting additional stuff or PAM or anything like that. They need to focus on what they're best at, which is best of breed in the live dealer marketplace, and simply push out and expand into as many American states as possible as quickly and get that first mover advantage. So you're nearly raising the bar of entry for incumbents trying to then get into all those different markets as well. So I don't think they would be buying any sports book in the next foreseeable future, and I think if they did, it would be taking their eyes off the prize.
I agree. I also believe that they should focus on what they do best. At the same time, you know, there is a gap in the market when it comes to cross-sell, and no one owns the experience holistically. It's very difficult to cross-sell from sportsbook, which is still the main point of acquisition in the US, into casino and into live dealer, to the point that most of the front-end infrastructures don't even support a proper launch of Evolution games, you know, where you can play while you're betting. So I think from that aspect, they could really improve sort of their control over the whole player base, sort of moves between the products. And in terms of PAM, I think it could give them opportunity to open up this conversation about exclusivity, because I don't think they're going to go out and say, from now on, you can only have Evo, Big Time Gaming, Red Tiger, NetEnt, and you don't need anything else. However, those exclusive deals already exist on the PAM side, where PAM is the only sort of distribution channel for them as well. And I think it could open this matter for them without making a stand of being an exclusive games provider.
Agreed, but remember, they're making what was a 68% profit margin at the moment, a phenomenal ratio considering in the gaming industry. Now, if you start running a sports book, I know it's 10, 20 times harder to run a sports book, resource and cost-wise, than it is to run an RNG slot game or a live dealer operation. And well, obviously, live dealer operations are difficult to run from a resource perspective, but introducing another vertical, which is going to take up so much time and resource and eat into your margins, at least initially, is that really what they need? Aren't they better on focusing on, you know, getting that 68% up to 75%, which would be incredible business to just to continue to be that dominant force in the market? Is this not the downfall of Playtech? Because they try to do too much and control too much, and that's why they're not at the top of their game like they were 10 years ago. I mean, have we analysed why Playtech has grown and faltered over the years? I mean, Intralot, if you're talking about lottery business from Sci Games, Intralot used to be this monster of a Greek operator working with all the governments. I don't even know if Intralot really exists these days. Well, certainly not. It's a former shadow of itself. So I think it's containment on a strategic basis is not the worst, and focus is not the worst thing in the world for Evolution right now.
Yeah, there's been several organizations through the years that have tried to kind of take the stab at becoming the one and only, let's say, go-to place for iGaming services 360. So say Playtech is the obvious example with the market share they had in the 2000s. I mean, something Paul Leyland highlighted yesterday as well is nothing lasts forever either. He highlighted the fact, you know, that PokerStars had this massive market share in the early 2010s up to the mid 2010s, and seemingly unstoppable. Then they start to diversify their revenue streams, and all of a sudden a contender pops up in GG Poker, who is now becoming a clear frontrunner to take over the liquidity that PokerStars had on the poker side back in the day. So I think something that Todd has been talking about a lot, Todd Hasselt, the CPO of Evolution, is just this, that they don't want to be the next Playtech. And he has been quite open to say that there is a lot of pressure from the shareholders to continue this M&A activity, and the obvious choice would be to acquire a sportsbook, acquire a platform, so on and so forth. But he has been reiterating that that is not what they care about. Just like what Tim mentioned here as well, is that they want to focus on keeping the eye on the price and growing where they have their expertise in house. Now the question is, how long can they sustain that for? When the opportunities come. In this case, scientific games. Is it the fact, like what Todd says as well, is that he mentioned that you can very easily get enticed to kind of diversify, to take these deals that seem good at first glance, but how do you keep the money on how do you keep the eyes on the price when everyone around you is and all the investors, all the major owners are asking you to kind of expand your portfolio? But it'll be very interesting, Karolina, to follow this rumor and see if there is some substance behind it. It'll be very, very interesting, because if they take the step to acquire Scientific Games, all of a sudden they become a totally different company. Now they are not a game studio any longer, a game producer any longer. All of a sudden they are. It's a clear directional shift towards becoming a more 360 degree service, would say. Very, very interesting to follow.
One point there, Pierre. I think, and I read this somewhere in the last week, that if they do the thing with Sire Games, they're going to put Lightning Roulette into some actual land-based casino floors. And that distribution that Sire Games has from a land-based slot machine gives them those ins into the casino floors. Imagine putting Lightning Roulette in there; it'd be amazing.
They have confirmed that already, Tim. I believe there's already PRs out there. Yes, they have already launched first together as a partnership with Scientific Games. Evolution have already launched Lightning Roulette in a physical casino.
And that might be the reason why then they might be interested in buying Scientific Games to further that relationship. Who knows?
I think one more thing that is worth highlighting, that with providing PAM often comes sort of managed services, which Sci-Fi is already providing to some operators, and I think that's might look like a small opportunity, but in the US, where the market maturity is not there yet, and there's a shortage of talent and people with expertise, Evolution being able to sort of offer managed services, it's also an opportunity to really grow the live dealer with all the experience that they hold from what's happening in Europe. And there's a lot of players in the US that would happily jump on the opportunity for someone to manage this for them and grow live dealer, considering the potential live dealer has.
Yes. Interesting, Karolina. I have, if you don't mind, Daniel, I know that you mentioned you prefer not to talk too much today, but I'll ask you a question anyway, and then feel free if you feel to keep it short. The argument from the investor side is that they are hoping for continued exponential growth quarter on quarter in the United States. They seem to be asking for that even in a short-term basis. Do you see it as straightforward as that in the US? Do you think that even in the short term that Evolution will be able to exponentially grow? What are the current indications for new states opening up for live casino? So feel free again to keep it short.
No problem. I can only give a general reading on the market at the moment. Sports betting is flying. As Nico mentions regularly about how quickly the states are moving. iGaming / casino is definitely taking its time. However, looking at the numbers and how powerful the revenue numbers are in casino iGaming states, I don't see them having any issues in being able to continue to attract investor interest in the US. I think it's a matter of time before most of the states will regulate iGaming, and if the trend continues and the revenue multiples on valuations and the profitability of iGaming versus sports betting continues in the way it's going, which all the indicators seem to show that it will, I see it being probably the more exciting sector in the US market when it comes to investment. There's just not that much opportunity yet. So I presume that the investors are savvy and they see the difference between the handle on sports betting and casino markets over there. And I'm sure they're factoring in the slower growth in the casino market. If I had to put money into business, I would definitely be distributing it across sports betting and casino and live in the US. I think there's huge room for growth over the next few years. So I see all positive signs still.
Brilliant. Interesting. Thanks for that, Daniel. And Alex, a question for you. Obviously, operating the aggregator Alea here in Europe, you're based in Spain, obviously. Just sticking on the topic to evolution and talking about geographical revenue splits. In Europe, Evolution posted stagnant revenue during the quarter. It actually remained the same as the previous quarter. Do you think that the growth in Europe is halting? Do you see this as worrying? Do you think that the future is still ahead in the European market?
Hey everybody. The feeling I have from Evolution valuation right now, and in the context of what happened to DraftKings 3 weeks ago with the SB Tech thing, that's going to be hard for Evolution to leverage the business they do in Asia while they're trying to enter US. It's one or the other. You can't play both games at the same time, because if you really want to enter US at some point, you're going to be forced to leave the Asian revenue, or you stay in Asia but you don't go in US. It's one or the other, and we've seen that when I won't name them. When this slot provider that was acquired, by NetEnt around 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, that Evo wanted to buy at the same time actually, and it ended up by Evo buying NetEnt. They were big in Asia, and they started by being at 80% of their revenue in Asia, and Asia was big for them. At some point, they were making, outrageous numbers in Asia. They just cut that arm off 1 year before preparing the sale of the company, because they wouldn't have been able to get to a valuation of 250, 300 mil with having the Asian business. And I remember talking to the guy back in time, and I said, why didn't you just do like everyone else? You create another brand for black markets, especially Asia. It's not even black markets in Europe or Australia. It's Asia. It's so far away, and basically, the guy wouldn't bother, didn't have time, and just want to focus on the valuation of the company. White, and he did well. Knowing the price they were about. I think that's happening to Evolution right now, and especially in the context of what's happening to DraftKings lately. And if I was an investor, I would be very cautious. Again, you can't play both cards at the same time. I see it completely impossible. And in regards of the growth in Europe, I was running operations in Europe in all regulated markets you can name. I just moved away from that, and as an aggregator, I see my customers. It's sad to say, but when they take Europe, they pretty unregulated, and I'm not even talking about Bitcoin, because that's another layer of unregulated. So it seems to me, and even some big guys that used to be very wide, they've left that field. they've left that field, and everybody's going east. Whether it's CIS, whether it's Asia, whether it's whatever it is. Everybody's flying away from Europe. I mean, there's no money to make there.
Interesting, Alex. Thanks for that. I mean, you raised something really interesting that I think is worth just following up on. The fact that you can't do both. You can't have the cake and eat it, so to say. If you want to go into the US, you have to be prepared to let go of the pre-regulated market revenue in Asia, if you want to define it like that. And I'd love to hear Daniel's quick thought on this as well. Is that the case, you think, from a regulatory point of view? Do you think if you want to be if you want to have good relationships with the regulators in the US and not risk of losing licenses and so on and so forth, do you think that is a must going forward, that you have to de-risk your Asia revenue?
There is no doubt about it. I don't think anyone is under any misconception that if you want to go into a regulated market like the US, that you need the cleanest of ledgers in your business, and where your revenue come from matters incredibly. I think there's a number of quite large businesses that have had to split off US operations to start separating their businesses out. And we know what happens if companies try and bury revenue in their books from grey black markets. It gets very complicated. So the US is pretty straightforward. Pay your taxes. Make sure your revenue is coming from a good place, and you'll be okay. But they take everything very, very seriously. And the scrutiny that you go through in trying to go through a license application process in the US is incredibly onerous, not just on the business but also on the individuals. I wouldn't recommend anyone who's operating in black markets to ever consider trying to take that revenue behind a business that's going to the US. It'd be a big waste of your time.
So from an operator, go ahead.
Just look at NetSense. I mean, NetSense was one of the first mover in the US markets when there was nothing there, and they jeopardized all the revenues. They had, maybe apart from Turkey, because then they would have just died, from pre-regulated markets. So they left France when everybody was still doing France. I mean, they left a lot of countries. They left Australia. They left Canada at some point, and then came back. But they've left every single market, and US was not making back in time any money for NetSense. They made a big bet there. I mean, they made a big bet on Live Dealer, which was a bad bet, and they made a big bet on US, which I can't tell if it was a good or a bad bet because of the revenue loss. I don't know how much they lost. But they had to do it. There was no other way doing it. And seeing Evo in this position, for me, it's if I contemplate Evo, the business object that is Evo, it's just an incongruity. There's something that doesn't fly and can't fly like that for longer. I mean, if some people are falling on DraftKings, you imagine that there is an ambush with big snipers aiming at Evo right now.
An interesting one, sorry if I can jump in here. I think it was Yggdrasil have got a new thing called the franchise model. So in markets where they don't want to operate directly for whatever reason, potentially they go to someone who operates in a jurisdiction and says, we will license you the Yggdrasil games, you'll pay us a monthly license fee, and you will basically rent the intellectual property of Yggdrasil and operate in that market. And the question would be, legally, does that remove the onus of responsibility from Yggdrasil, and they just become a software license or intellectual property licensing company? And is that potentially a way to get around these grey areas of the market?
That's a very interesting point, Tim. I'm quite familiar with the Yggdrasil setup. However, sorry, but it doesn't fly. It doesn't fly because you're taking GGR revenues. So you can have a franchise, you can say put it on your server, I don't see where it comes from. I mean, they probably are the best lawyers in there, but at the moment you're taking a cut from gaming revenues. I don't see how you can protect yourself behind that. It's a nice layer. It adds a layer. Don't get me wrong. It adds a layer, but for a company like Yggdrasil, it flies. I don't think it would fly for a company like Evo, and I see it. I'm just thinking loudly. I see it more complicated to achieve in live dealer setup.
Karolina, feel free to go ahead as well. You had a.
No, I just wanted to add that this approach has also been tried in the US on a couple of businesses that I know, and it did not work. Exactly for the reason that Alexandre stated, that if it was a fixed fee payment or a fixed fee commission, there's one thing. But the moment there is a rev share, for the US at least, it's being considered as a business that needs, it's the same. It's a business that is generating revenue, and you're part of it, so it's not separated.
From an evolution perspective, you would think that since they are already operating in multiple states, if there would be a regulatory issue, we would have probably already seen it. Is that fair?
I'm not sure, because it's still, I think it's still developing, that whole view of what happens outside of US. So I think DraftKings report was one of the first eye openers, and it will develop from there. So I don't think they have any issues now, but I just think that this regulatory situation and how people are perceiving certain setups will evolve together with market evolving and expertise on global sort of operations evolve for regulators.
Interesting to hear. Guys, I'm a bit mindful of time here. We are 3 minutes over our lovely Thursday morning, so I would just like to ask one last question here as an open question to the forum. Is there any more details, any more insights to add to the discussion here for now? Anything someone wants to contribute with? It can be evolution related or not. And I'll just leave the mic open here for a couple of.
We need to ask Tim, since his favorite subject is NFTs and he's quite vocal about it. What do you think about DraftKings launching the marketplace and sort of the whole venturing into the NFT vertical?
I actually haven't seen or read that one. If you can send me a link, I'll check it out. But the interesting one I did see yesterday was my favourite Zed Run just did a fundraiser, Series A, and they had Anderson Horowitz as one of their investors and raised 20 million, I think, on 100 or 200 million valuation. So yeah, certainly more money pouring in, and there was even in this current crypto climate, I think it was another crypto exchange did a raise of 900 million on an $18 billion valuation. I forget the exchange, but yeah, some interesting stuff going on for sure there.
OpenSea was given a $1.5 billion valuation this week, I believe.
Bloody hell!
Wow,
it's insane, and I think Top Shot's being valued at $7.5 billion.
Yeah, so rare was 3.2 billion. I know, because we declined to participate in their fundraiser. I just felt it was over the top valuation. That there's no room for growth there at those crazy levels.
DraftKings has partnered with Tom Brady backed startup as well to do
the
this
autograph
NFT.
one.
Yeah, so okay. I quite like the approach DraftKings taking. I think it's pretty cool. Very interesting to see how it plays out. I think the problem with anything going into the NFT space is just getting traction. So if DraftKings can manage to sell that to all their fantasy players, I think and they can convince them to take their money out of where they're currently putting it and store it longer term in some kind of barely tangible asset, I think they could do well. It'll be interesting to see how companies like DraftKings integrate that into their ecosystem, and because for operators' perspective, it's all about liquidity and having turnover and handle, right? But when you start putting things into assets, it becomes quite static. So,
but is that the loyalty program that if you become the top weekly bettor on the tournament, like part of your CRM program, you win the Tom Brady NFT thing? and
Maybe.
that becomes something to cheer about from the sidelines.
They're building a marketplace from what I understand. So it seems to be more like a traditional offering, but I'm sure they'll find ways to tie it into their sportsbook.
Yeah, but then in that case it
I
becomes an
see
acquisition tool, doesn't it?
It could be a great combination if they try to do something with it and combine sort of the approach that Socios has with their fan tokens. The combination between the demographic that they've got and the NFT marketplace and sort of a Socios type of token strategy. It could be really powerful.
Very interesting to see the new venture. I read the news as well. I think the press release came out yesterday. I think you're right, Karolina, something like that. Be interesting for you to see Tim as well, for sure. With that, guys, I'd like to wrap up the conversation today. Very, very interesting conversation today, I must say. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thanks everyone for coming on stage. Daniel, nice to have you back here as well. Nico and Karolina, thank you guys, like always, for preparing these sessions together with me. It's a highlight of my week for sure, and that's a good reason to stay up to date with the industry. So thank you guys for that. Just as a final reminder here, the session today has been recorded. Again, to the people on stage, if there is anything in this hour that you'd like to have edited out, we very much respect the Clubhouse ethos of keeping things private. So feel free to reach out to me in that case, and we'll make sure to edit that out. Otherwise, we'll publish this session later on today. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone again. Bogdan, Karolina, Rory, Nico, Daniel, Alexandre, Tim, and Liesbeth, thanks for joining us on stage. And we will see you here again next week. Take care, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ciao, bye.
Bye bye.